The Whispering Shadows. It was late, the kind of late where the darkness feels suffocating. Emma, a young woman in her early 30s, had just moved into an old apartment on the outskirts of town. The place was cheap, which was why she'd chosen it. The rent was affordable, and the landlord seemed friendly enough, though there was something odd about the way his eyes lingered just a bit too long. But Emma had her reasons for moving. She was starting fresh. A new job, new town, new life. She didn't mind the strange feeling of the apartment, the way the creaky floorboards seemed to groan beneath her feet, or the way the shadows seemed to stretch farther than they should at night. What she didn't know was that this apartment had a secret that had already claimed one victim, and it was waiting for her. It started innocently enough. A man named David, a neighbor in the same building, came to introduce himself a few days after Emma moved in. He was polite, even charming, with dark hair that fell just above his eyes and a voice that could be described as smooth but unsettling. He told her he lived on the floor below, and they exchanged pleasantries. For a while, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But then, one evening, David knocked on her door. "Hey, Emma, I just wanted to check on you," he said, his voice a little too soft. "I noticed you haven't been answering your phone, and I thought you might need some company." Emma felt a chill when she looked into his eyes. They were hollow, almost too intense. But she invited him in, thinking, maybe it was just the newness of everything that made her feel on edge. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. The apartment was eerily quiet, the kind of quiet that made her skin crawl. As she lay in bed, trying to ignore the unsettling noises of creaking wood and faint whispers, she heard something. It was faint at first, like a whispering voice from the walls themselves. She rolled over, half waking, thinking it was just the wind or the building settling. But then the whispers grew louder, more distinct. The voice was soft but insistent, and it seemed to be saying her name. "Emma!" Emma's heart raced. She sat up, her body tense with fear. The voice, it didn't sound like her own thoughts. It sounded like someone was standing right beside her. The next day, Emma saw David again in the hallway. This time, there was something darker in his eyes. He smiled at her, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. It was like he knew something she didn't. "Is everything okay, Emma?" he asked, his voice low, almost too concerned. Emma felt an unease settle in her stomach. She nodded quickly and walked past him, but as she did, she heard the faintest whisper coming from behind her. "He's waiting for you." She froze. Turning around, she saw David standing there, watching her with an unreadable expression. He said nothing, but something in his gaze made her feel like she was being watched. Not just by him, but by something else. Something lurking in the shadows. That night, the whispers became impossible to ignore. They were louder now, more urgent, as if the walls themselves were closing in on her. Emma could no longer pretend it was just the building settling. The voices were real, too real. She called her best friend Natalie and asked if she could come over. When Natalie arrived, Emma was nearly frantic. "I'm telling you, there's something in this place," Emma said, her voice trembling. "I keep hearing whispers, and it's like someone's watching me. It's David. I don't trust him." Natalie, ever the skeptic, shook her head. "Emma, you're just stressed. Maybe it's the new place, the new job. Just relax. It's probably nothing." But Emma couldn't shake the feeling. She felt trapped in that apartment, suffocated by the darkness that seemed to creep from every corner. Later that night, as Natalie was about to leave, they both heard a soft thud from the hallway. It sounded like something, or someone, had just fallen. Emma's breath hitched. She opened the door and looked out into the dimly lit hallway. There was no one there, but the air felt thick, heavy, as if something was wrong. As the days went on, Emma became increasingly paranoid. The whispers were relentless now, following her everywhere she went in the apartment. They would stop whenever David was nearby, but as soon as he was gone, they would return, louder and more insistent. One evening, after days of sleepless nights, Emma gathered the courage to confront David. She knocked on his door, heart racing in her chest. David answered the door with that same eerie, half-smiling expression. "What's going on, Emma?" he asked, his voice too calm. "I need to know what's happening," Emma said, her voice shaking. "I keep hearing voices, and I think it's you." I think you're the one doing this. David's smile faltered just for a second. His eyes went cold. He stepped closer to her, blocking the doorway. Emma, he said softly, you don't understand. It's not me. It's the building. It's been waiting for someone like you. Emma felt her blood run cold. What do you mean? David's expression turned dark, and for the first time, Emma saw something other than politeness in his eyes. I wasn't supposed to let you find out. But now that you have, he trailed off, his voice taking on a more sinister edge. It's already too late. Emma turned to flee, but before she could take a step, a voice, not David's, but a deep, guttural voice, whispered from the walls, You belong to us. Suddenly she realized the truth. David had been the first victim. He wasn't the one causing the voices. He was trying to escape. Emma raced back to her apartment, her heart pounding. She had to leave, but she couldn't. The door slammed shut behind her. The walls around her seemed to pulse with life. She could hear the voices now, not just in whispers, but in full, terrifying sentences. You can't escape! In the corner of the room, she saw David again, but this time, his face was distorted, his eyes black, his smile twisted. No! Emma screamed. What is happening to you? David's voice was no longer his own. It was deep, guttural, and otherworldly. We've been waiting for someone to open the door. Now, you will join us, forever. And then, everything went black. The next morning, the landlord came to check on Emma's apartment. When he opened the door, all he found was an empty room, completely untouched, as if no one had ever lived there. The walls were silent now. The whispers were gone. But in the corner of the room, an old photograph sat on the floor. It was a picture of Emma and David, and in the background, the shadows seemed to stretch, twisting like they were alive. So, if you ever find yourself walking through an old building late at night, don't ignore the whispers. Don't look too closely at the shadows. Because sometimes, when you let your guard down, they'll come for you.